intro. Good afternoon, gamers, and welcome to another episode of Games with Dave. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by fellow Mainer and indie game designer from Dark Star Adventures, Jeff Demers. Jeff and his wife, Casey, create bizarre tabletop role-playing game content with absolutely amazing art, and they are currently running a Kickstarter, Cult of the Cave Crickets, which is a multi-session adventure for second-level players for both Dungeon Crawl Classics and D&D 5th Edition. Welcome to the show, Jeff. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
My pleasure. So this adventure looks and sounds kind of bonkers with what I've seen on the Kickstarter. What were some of, I guess we'll get right into it, some of your inspirations for creating this adventure, Cult of the Cave Crickets?
Wow. Coming right out of the gate with a hot question.
Fire, baby.
Okay, let's go. Wow. Okay. So my inspirations. So, when you talk about this being a bonkers adventure, it is pretty bonkers. It can get kind of dark, kind of gruesome, kind of weird. But for the adventures that I've been running since I was a teenager, it's pretty tame. And I didn't want to go too hard on my first published adventure. I didn't want to bring out, too much. I kind of wanted to see what people's tolerance for cosmic horror and darker themes could be.
Nice.
There's really no trigger warnings that are needed beyond the fact that people die, which is pretty obvious in most role-playing games.
Right.
My inspirations. So strangely enough, for this cosmic horror adventure that's based on At the Mountains of Madness and Color Out of Space by Lovecraft, my main inspiration is actually the journey of Shackleton. If you've ever read the book or listened to the audiobook, The Endurance. He's an Arctic explorer, and when he and his crew arrived to explore and do a scientific expedition in the Arctic, they became ice locked and they couldn't escape before the big freeze happened, and they got stuck there all winter. And it's very much mirrors parts of At the Mountains of Madness, being stuck in an Arctic frozen environment that's completely inhospitable to human life. There's no food, no warmth, no shelter. You're basically just stuck with your ship and whatever camping supplies you have, and you got to find your way out. That's the basis for At the Mountains of Madness, and it's also the true life tale of Shackleton and his crew. So that was a huge inspiration for me about what happens if a research expedition is going to an incredibly inhospitable area, and they find something there that's incredibly supernatural. So not only do they have the environment that they have to survive in, like random snowstorms, having their ship ice locked, stuff like that, but also something beyond the realm of human comprehension that sort of creeps in on the edges of your vision, something you may have always thought was there hiding just over the next rise. You're now face to face with it, and you must confront it, and your sanity starts to break. So that's sort of the prelude to this adventure, is what happens to this expedition. And the players get to go and start to unravel that mystery without knowing anything about it. They find a camp, and they get to sort of figure out by the evidence what happened to the members of the expedition, where they ended up, and then ultimately and hopefully save at least some of them, which they have the opportunity to, while also going in and encountering a bunch of fungal monstrosities and the eponymous cave crickets themselves.
Sounds really fun. I can't wait, because Into the Mountains of Madness is one of my favorite. I've got it. You can't see it, but I've got a shelf back here that's got the adventure on there from, I think it was 5e was the last one with Call of Cthulhu that they put out. Into the Mountains of Madness, or it was actually Return to the Mountains of Madness.
Right.
I can't remember. So another thing that really stood out to me that we've kind of talked about already is the cover of this adventure. It is just simply amazing. And I told you that it reminded me of, there's that beauty right there. And it reminded me of the Tales of Suspense and the Tales of Horror comics from the 1950s. Was I actually kind of onto something there, or do I just have a vivid imagination that took me back to those comics?
No, you're 100% correct. So
Nice.
even though that time period doesn't really match up with Lovecraft specifically, it does match up with cosmic horror, at least in my mind. I grew up watching, like, I think it was called Friday Night Monster Madness. It was basically like a double creature feature. I think it was on USA or something like that.
Either that or WSBK. Do you remember that
Local
channel we
channel
had
for
up
you.
here? Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad used to like set aside time, like remind me, we're gonna watch this, we're gonna watch this, we're gonna watch this. It would be like, They Live, The Blob, Them, Giant Ants,
Yeah.
Crazy Mushroom Giants was one of them. Like, yeah, so that was a huge inspiration for me. And I'm also just a lover of old sci-fi and fantasy. So when you look at like the covers of old Clark or Poul Anderson books, there's always like that weird off-kilter like illustration style. I'm a huge fan of that. And of course, you get like the semi-parody ones, like the newer Flash Gordon movie and stuff that really like cinch that like art style. So we really wanted to draw from that inspiration when we were like working on this cover, which my wife did all the art on the cover and in the entire book. And she did like weeks of study of like old 40s, 50s, and 60s sci-fi and fantasy covers to like come up with this composition and art style.
Oh, she crushed it. That is just, that cover gets the chef's kiss for me, because like I saw this when it went live on Kickstarter, and it was, I don't think there was any delay from my hand going to here to my mouse to hit back when I saw that cover.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It screamed, like I had said, tales of suspense, tales of horror, weird tales and stuff like that to me. And I can't wait to play this. This is going to be a fun one.
Awesome.
I can already tell, which we can kind of get into more. So, so what, you're doing this for both Dungeon Crawl Classics and 5th edition.
Yep.
What made you decide to go multi-system? Do you play both 5e and DCC, or was it just to kind of put the option out there for people?
So I am, I guess you would call system agnostic. I don't really have like a favorite system. I play lots of systems. If we're going to do a really quick one shot, we do something like Lasers and Feelings or some other one sheet RPG. I love like tabletop role-playing game rules. I like seeing new ideas and seeing what's out there. When I started writing this, I wrote it systemless. I knew that it was going to end up being DCC and 5e. I would have loved to also do a 3.5 D&D version. That's what I played the most in high school. And I really considered making it a D&D 2nd edition as well. But then I didn't want to have to deal with THAC0. So I scrapped that idea. I was like, how am I going to convert the monsters and do THAC0 and the spell resistance rules in AD&D? So I scrapped that idea, but I wrote the whole adventure systemless, just with like notes about how I might deal with it in different systems. And then I went out and I figured out, how do I do this for DCC? How do I get the permission to do it as a third-party author? And I was going to do DCC, 5e, and GURPS. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it in GURPS. They have a pretty strict 3PP policy that didn't really allow for this. But
bummer.
Yeah, it's rough. They don't have a lot of 3PP like authors out there. So I did DCC, 5e, and I might expand into other systems with our next one when that one comes around.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, we can talk about that after, because I've already got some ideas, but I want to keep the ball rolling on this.
Let's roll that ball.
So with you doing both systems, did you find it harder to get things to like moving it from 5, where you said you wrote it systemless? I'm imagining not, but did you find converting it for 5e or DCC harder, or were they equally balanced on statting everything out and balancing everything out?
So 5e is definitely more difficult for kind of 2 reasons. One, the monster stat blocks are more verbose. So layout was a lot more challenging. It just, things take up more space in 5e. And they have to be very particularly phrased in the monster stat block, because players expect that, because there's a standard for exactly how it should be. The second reason is the text itself, not just the monster stat blocks, also has to be incredibly particular. So in DCC, you can kind of just be like, oh, PC may try to climb this wall, parentheses, DC 15. And then the judge would go, okay, DC 15. So if they're a thief, they can use climb. If they're not a thief, I'd maybe give them -1 on the dice chain, whatever it might be. And they can kind of like roll with that because that's part of the system. In 5e, instead of just being like, boop, DC 15, you have to say, saving or, dexterity saving throw 15 or whatever like the specific saving throw is. It takes up like 4 times more space. And
interesting.
Learning about that specific particular way of phrasing things, not just with saving throws, but with everything in D&D, was pretty challenging. And then combing through what I thought was a systemless document and finding phrases that wouldn't work in D&D and having to change them was very difficult and time consuming. But we're really happy with the end result, and we're super proud to like be able to offer it in 5e and DCC.
Yeah, I'm excited because I play both. I've got a group of friends I play 5e with, a group of friends I'll play DCC with, and it's like the best of both worlds, really.
Nice. I got the one group, but we do everything.
Nice.
So I just picked up Avatar. I can't wait to run that. Like they had their Kickstarter fulfill a couple months ago, so I've been reading through that. Just lots of like powered by the apocalypse type stuff. All that's really fun for us. We like trying everything.
So you're a big Monster of the Week fan? Or no? No, that's not powered by the apocalypse. That's actually the Blade system, isn't it?
I actually haven't tried it. And I thought when you said that, you were referring to X-Files because they would have the Monster of the Week episodes. And I was like, yes, I'm a huge fan of that. But no, I haven't tried.
Well, the X-Files is fantastic. I could talk for hours about that with you.
Good. So good.
We would probably drive people crazy talking about that.
Yeah, this is now an X-Files interview podcast, whatever. And yeah, we're going to talk X-Files. We're going to talk Xena. We're going to talk what else was on Fox and USA in the late 90s.
Oh, what was Hercules?
Oh, yeah, of course. Hercules, Xena. Yeah, I just rewatched some Xena the other night. So
nice.
Good stuff.
So was there anything that you had to cut that was hard to cut with going to either rule system?
Both adventures are identical. So I didn't the stories like the story is the same in both, the adventure is the same in both. The only difference is how the rules interact with the story. So if there's like a call for like a fortitude save, it might change to something else in 5e.
Gotcha.
Like
sort of like you were saying of like having to adapt it to the wording and everything.
But as for cutting stuff, yeah, I mean, regardless of the system, I ended up reducing the adventure by probably 20% from its first draft version to now, because I just crammed too many ideas into there, and it ended up being too many areas and too many like locations within the areas, too many monsters, too many of this, too many of that. And it just became kind of muddled. And when I finally landed on, because I had like an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot. And when I decided to just have the A and B plot and figured out which plot was the stronger one, which is finding the expedition members, and I started fleshing that out further, the C plot and all of the like side stuff I had just didn't fit in. And it was hard to tie it in like a congruous manner so that players wouldn't be like, why the heck is this here? What's going on with this? Without providing what would be pages and pages of lore that probably no one is interested in. They want to get to the action. So I cut all that out because it just required too much explanation. But yeah, I do have a lot of stuff that could be like for a follow-up adventure or like an additional one-shot that I might release later on.
Nice. That's good to know. I will, if you do that, I will be there day one because yeah. I mean, Mainers have got to support Mainers, man. So and indies got to support indies. So
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that you're actually doing that really intrigued me with this that I can't think of. I mean, there's always a way of doing this, but that I've never seen with something published is the multiple beginnings and the multiple ending option. Can you kind of go into how that works without giving too much away?
Sure. So there is like a main, where we're from, but there is a main start. And it's sort of the recommended start if you can get the characters into a position where they're traveling and you're just sort of like between adventures and this is what happens. But that's not always possible. Sometimes the characters are in a city and they're nowhere near the fringes of civilization where this takes place, or they're, coming out from like a cave system and they've done like a really hard adventure and they need time to rest, whatever it might be. So I provide some ideas for alternate starts that can rope the players into the adventure without it feeling ham-fisted because, all of a sudden you teleported and you're in the middle of nowhere and this is what happens. So that's like the idea behind the alternate starts, which you do see in a couple other adventures as well. And I always appreciate when I see alternate starts. The alternate endings, they mainly, so the B plot of the adventure, which I don't want to ruin anything. Obviously, with the A and B plot, you can succeed or fail to different degrees. If you succeed in that plot, that B plot, you can, there's like the happy ending, and then there's a couple lines and ideas about how you might go from there for how this might disrupt the game world because of what the events that happened in the adventure. If the players fail, there's a lot more crazy stuff that could happen. And from sort of minimally to most disruptive to the surrounding area or even the entire game world, I lay out what sort of like cataclysm could be coming. And the players are aware of it. They don't have to get involved in it, but you might see kingdoms like becoming allies or warring with each other to try to control or protect against like the events of different sort of apocalyptic outcomes. So I kind of detail that in the end as a way to like help with additional like campaign or plot hooks or adventure hooks.
Very cool.
There is another spot in the adventure where I do that as well. I try to do that in all my adventures. I like to pepper in plot hooks for myself. So like 3-4 months later, a player can be like, oh yeah, I have the skull of Denmark. What did we ever find out about that? Maybe we should go investigate it. And then I'm like, okay, I'll write an adventure. I don't tell them that. I just, I just go and I look at my notes and I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I like to pepper that into like the like pro adventures as well to like help judges and DMs like build out in a consistent manner so that this adventure can help expand their campaign instead of like just restricting it down to this simple story and then it's done.
Right. And I like how this could be a starting point of a whole campaign world that they could just be like, well, what happens, and I'm going to throw you to the wolves if you failed. And if you succeeded, hey, cool. So
yeah. And there's still some like things if you succeeded where it's like, this isn't over. Like if the judge doesn't want this to be over, it's not over. There's still things out there that are terrifying and that still exist and that need to be handled.
Very cool. I like it. I like open-ended endings rather than it being what is the word I'm looking for? Just completely went right out of my brain. But rather than having a solid ending that's just the end of everything and you're like, okay, on to the next adventure, where it creates a branching out of the campaign you just played. If that makes sense.
Yeah, this is a level 2 adventure. So it's neither the beginning of the character journey nor hopefully the end of it, unless they died in this adventure. So you kind of want to provide a continuation aspect. A level 2 adventure is interesting because it's a bridge. You have to have something at the beginning for them to get on that bridge, knowing that they've just done a bunch of stuff. And then you need something at the end to hook into the future adventures. And it can be kind of challenging as a DM or judge to like do that and make it seamless. So I just try to provide the tools that they need to kind of like assist with that.
Awesome. Another thing I saw on the Kickstarter page is 10 new monsters, I believe it was, coming out in this for both systems. Without giving away too much, can you tell me about the Krikari, if I'm saying that right? Then maybe some of the other a little wetting of the palate for the other monsters.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I got this image of the Krikari right here. So this is a Krikari. This is one interpretation of a Krikari. And this sidebar is actually about the Krikari. So,
very cool.
I'll leave that up for like a second so that people can see it. But the Krikari are mutant cave crickets that have fed upon the flesh of an ancient cosmic horror from another world. And it's mutated them into larger proportions mainly, so that they're more humanoid. So they're something like 5 to 7 feet tall, several hundred pounds, and they've become incredible zealots for this mushroom god, as they would consider it a god, but it's just an incredibly powerful being, much like most patrons in DCC.
Right.
And they've formed an entire society around the consumption of their god's flesh and the mutations that gives, and the whole religious aspect of it, that everything is based on that for them and the service of their god. And what this god is trying to accomplish, they are wrapped up into trying to help it accomplish. And that features in the adventure quite a lot. So that'd be the first sort of like main monster in this adventure. From there flows out a host of fungal monstrosities. So cool. Mushroom god, mycelium, fungus, it all ties together. So in the caves that are surrounding this area of the Black Mountain, which is sort of the region that all this takes place in, there's a whole bunch of fungal creatures. There's a lot of variance there. I don't know how deep I should go into like specific creatures you might find, but there's
however deep you're comfortable going. I don't want you to give away any more than you're comfortable doing, but if you want to talk about them, I'm not going to say no.
I'll go through a couple of them. So there's there's a monster based on the putties from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Do you remember the putties? You could hit them right in the chest and they would explode. So there's this fungal creature called a mycoloom. Mycelium, MYC, mycoloom. And they're really thin. They're probably only like this thick, like their whole body. But in their breast is this ball of, I guess you could call it like, mushroom energy. It's not, it's explained a bit more in there, but it's sort of like reanimating fungal juice that allows them to be alive. And if you crack it, they explode, which obviously is really bad for any character that's standing nearby. But it is an easy way to destroy them, because otherwise it can be quite difficult to destroy. So on a critical hit or on a mighty deed in DCC with a called shot, you can hit that and destroy it and kind of hurt yourself in the process, but kind of get them out of the way faster. So I think they're really cool. They're very putty-like, where they just kind of come out of walls. They kind of just come out of the floor because they're fungus. They just kind of like rip themselves off like a sticker. So I like them a lot. I think they're very cool.
That visual is so great, of picturing like walking through a cavern and then all of a sudden just something comes at you off the wall and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I kind of picture like, those Velcro walls that you can throw yourself up against?
Yes.
I kind of picture that they're stuck there with their eyes closed, kind of like Schwarzenegger in Predator, just hiding. Yeah. And then they're just like, pull themselves off the Velcro wall and just,
That's great. I love that visual, because it's funny that you picked Schwarzenegger and Predator, because that's what I pictured, was the eyes opening and just seeing the whites of the eyes.
So the crickets, the mycolooms, there's a fungal spider. It's not a real spider. It's a spider. It's a fungus that's taken the form of a spider just perchance. It has lots of legs. It can it spins fungal webs and tries to entrap people. And there's a special caste in the Krikari culture that has completely devoted itself to their mushroom god, and they've like kind of lost their individuality and been brought into the hive mind of the mushroom god. And by doing so, they've infested themselves with the fungus. And in a lot of cases, their skulls split open and the fungus is seeping into their brains and controls their limbs. actually very much like The Last of Us. There's like a fungus that like controls people, right? So
That's what I
sort
was
of like,
that's what I was thinking was
yeah,
like does it contribute to the communication amongst them so that all of a sudden you could be walking down a cavern hallway and everything turns at you at once because you just killed one of the gosh, I lost the name. The ones with the thing in the chest.
Mycoloom. Yeah.
Mycoloom, yes. And like if you destroy that, then everything turns and looks at you, and it's like,
Yeah.
what did
There's
we do?
definitely a hive mind aspect to all of the funguses. And yeah, I hadn't really thought about The Last of Us before, but I love that concept of like having a hive mind like that where you damage one and then they're all like, hmm?
Someone's here.
Yeah.
It's dinner time. So the dice chain versus regular D&D dice.
Mhm.
What kind of what am I looking for here? Sorry, I am losing my train of thought here.
Like a
I wrote like,
conversion?
what's that?
Conversion between the two, perhaps?
Yeah, and how does the dice chain affect things in contrast to regular dice? You know, because you have the plus and minus 1 or 2 with the dice chain versus just roll a d20 and add 4 or 5 or something.
Right. Yeah. So for each 1D, I tend to do +2 in D&D. And I arrived at that by asking the different DCC Discords what they thought. And I talked
Oh,
about it
cool.
on the DCC RPG subreddit as well with someone. And in practice, I think it does work out. The thing is that D&D characters are a lot more powerful than DCC characters. So, and modifiers are more powerful than the dice chain for the most part. Like just giving like a static, if I were to give them like a +4, it would blow a +1D out of the water every single time. So it's
Right.
about finding sort of like, you know, there's no average for rolling a single 1d6. It's equally possible to roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So what do
Right.
you choose to like represent the fact that they don't have to roll, but they're also more powerful in general? So a +2 is generally pretty good for that most people have said. Of course, a DM could give +3 or +4. Once you buy the adventure, I don't care what you do. You can modify it as much as you want. It's yours to take. And, art changes once you publish it. It's no longer your own thing anymore. So I totally encourage people to like give a different plus or even incorporate the dice chain into 5e if that's your thing. Or in some cases in the adventure, instead of giving a +1D, I give advantage. So people could do that as well.
That could be mean, like rolling 2d30 or 2d24. And yeah, you take the higher one. And I usually need it because I've had like my dice cursed for a while now, it
Yeah.
seems like.
I always roll very low. And when I switched to GURPS, that was a blessing. When I ran like a whole GURP campaign, and every session I was just slaughtering everyone, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, everyone, because I was the GM.
Two.
I was like, oh, sorry, it's another critical hit. I rolled 3 ones.
Oh man. Oh. So the stretch goals are pretty cool. More monsters, more
Mhm.
items, and stuff like that. What stretch goals still remain to be unlocked?
So yeah, so the first stretch goal was a bestiary, which is all the monsters are very spread out through the book. So you can see like the Krakari Berserker stat block is right there. This is the
Yep.
DCC version. And we really went back and forth like, should the monsters be right in line in the text or should they all be at the end? And DCC likes to put them in line, D&D likes to put them at the end. We ultimately decided to go with inline, but the D&D stat blocks are huge. So we were like, if we can, and it's a ton of work to make a bestiary, especially with the extra art we would do. So we were like, we'll put a stretch goal, and if we hit that stretch goal at 5K, 3K, we'll make a bestiary and put it at the end of the adventure so that people can have both. So that's what we did
Nice.
for 3K. 5K, we added 2 new monsters, including Wandering Monsters, a Wandering Monster rule set, because there isn't actually a lot of information about Wandering Monsters in DCC, like officially. So, and 5e has a lot of Wandering Monster stuff, including like a million variants. So I wanted to take those two things and kind of like put them together and give my spin on it for how it could work in this adventure with this, like these different regions and what monsters are actually appropriate for that. So that comes along with two new monsters, which will bring the tally up to 12 monsters. At 7K, we're updating the print quality. So this is the original quality. This is our hard proof copy. So we're on 70 pounds of untreated paper and 100 pound for the cardstock cover. And the ink is actually incredibly vibrant. When I made the stretch goal, I hadn't gotten the hard proof yet. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of cutting costs a little bit to actually make sure that we can like do a print run. And when I received it, I was like, oh my God, this is incredibly good quality. I actually called up the printer and I was like, just to make sure, like, can you repeat back to me what my settings were on that print? And it was all correct. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. So at 7K, we are still going to improve the quality. So it'll be better interior paper. And there's another ink setting we can do. So we are going to look into maybe increasing for more vibrant colors. And we have like a budget set for it. And if we don't hit that budget with those changes, because this quality is actually really, really good, we're going to take the remaining money and upgrade the binding. Because right now we got this like saddle stitch. So that just means that they put staples, 2 staples, which is kind of the standard for adventures. Yep. That you see in 5e and DCC, but we'll upgrade that to a more sturdy binding so that it can like exist longer on your shelf and you can like bend it and open, you know. And there is one more stretch goal, which is at 10K, which God willing, we hit that one. My God, that'd be incredible. I'm going to write an additional one shot that explores the lore of the Black Mountain and the Mushroom God and the cult of the Cave Crickets deeper. Part of that is the 20% that I cut out, as well as a bunch of extra ideas I had to leave on the cutting room floor as well. And that will be free to everyone that backs at the digital level or above. So if you back at all, you'll get the free adventure.
Nice. Well, folks listening out there, the link is in the ticker and in the description. So back it and let's get this up to 10K so that Jeff can put everything back into it. That would be awesome. I would love that. So
yeah, I would love that too.
10K, folks. So I've got one more question for you. And then if you're cool with it, we can jump into the spreads you sent and kind of talk about those. Yeah. Cool. I was just wanted to let you go over the different pledge levels for folks that may be on the fence or are just coming across this video after today before the Kickstarter ends.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's a couple of them. So let me just pull up the Kickstarter real quick. Okay, so yeah, so I'll just go through the pledge levels real quick.
Cool.
So the important thing to know is that when you pledge at any level, you have to choose whether you want the DCC version or the 5e version. They're completely different items. It's not like you buy a copy and it has the rules for both. So you either get the digital or the print of just one. If you want to get both, you can do an add-on to add the other one, or if you want extra copies, you can do an add-on. So that's probably the first thing to understand. I've just gotten that question a lot. I think people have been burned in the past and they buy an adventure and it's just 5 different rule systems all crammed in. And no, that's not my style. So let's see. So there's the PDF edition. It's at $7. That's 30% off what the retail price is going to be of $9.99. So backing on Kickstarter at any level is going to be a discount. At $15, you get a print copy. It's going to retail for $19.99. That comes with a free PDF copy. That might not be true after the Kickstarter. It kind of depends on how individual retailers want to handle that. I am sending retailers copies of both when they purchase, but I know Goodman Games does that, but I don't know what other distributors are going to do. So if you want to get a print copy with a free PDF, doing it during the Kickstarter is the best time because you also get 25, 30% off, whatever it may be. At $20, you get a signed print copy. So it's signed by myself and my wife, who is the illustrator. We'll sign right on the inside cover, which is this awesome piece of art that she did right here.
Ooh.
I can line it up. So we'll sign with like a nice reflective gold or silver marker right there. And that will never happen again. It's just Kickstarter only.
Nice.
At $40, we'll do the signed print copy. You still get the free PDF. Every time you buy a print copy, you get a free PDF. And at the $40 level, you also get your name in the adventure, and not as like an NPC or anything like that. We're doing a legendary beneficiaries like heading. It's going to be right on that front page, most likely. And we're going to list everyone that pledges at the 40 or above tier right there. So you can kind of get your name immortalized in there. And it's just a way to show your support for the adventure and for Casey and I at Dark Star Adventures, and kind of just have your name there forever. And if this adventure ever becomes one that people start recommending, on the first page, they'll show that you believed in us right from the beginning. So we would really appreciate that as well. And there are 2 more tiers. At $60, this is an ultra special tier. So you get that signed print copy with the free PDF. You still get your name in the adventure. But Foxy, who everyone in the DCC community knows Foxy, works at Goodman Games and is sort of the unofficial mascot of Goodman Games and DCC in general. Super active judge on different sites for actually running games as a professional judge. So she will be running up to 2 games. So with 2 groups of people, this adventure in DCC. So there are 12 spots available. So there'll be 4 to 7 people per game, depending how many slots get filled up. And it will take 2 to 4 sessions to actually run them all. So for $60, you get everything at the $40 tier. And for only pledging an extra $20, you're getting 12 to 16 hours of a professional judge running the adventure for you, which is...
That's sick.
Yeah, she really did us a solid here. She like really like gave a deep discount to make sure that I don't know. She was just doing us a big favor. She's awesome.
That's awesome. She does a great job, like as a judge. Like,
yeah,
she's amazing.
Oh yeah. Casey and I are both big fans of hers, and like she was just running an X-Crawl stream the other day that was awesome. And if you haven't checked out X-Crawl yet, check it out. It's another Goodman Games product that's coming out. And the final tier is $99. It's for retailers. So if you're a friendly local gaming shop or an online distributor, whatever you may be, you can get 8 signed print copies with 8 free PDF copies, and there's an additional discount implied. So instead of just 25 to 30% off like at the other tiers, you get like an additional 20 or 25% off. And then you get to choose what 8 copies you want. So you could say, I want 4 of the 5e, 4 of the DCC, whatever mix you want. Oh, cool. And then there's a bunch of add-ons. The add-ons range from digital wallpapers and sticker packs that will be part of like what we ship out to you, to prints of the awesome art that Casey did in the adventure, extra versions of the adventure if you want to get like an extra print copy. And the tote bag. Oh, I forgot all about the tote bag. One of the art pieces is like the Krikari head, and it says, I joined the cult. And if you live in a state like us where they require that you bring fabric grocery bags to the store, it's just kind of a cool way to kind of like rep the adventure and show your support for us while you're at Shaw's.
That's awesome. I was going to try to pull a picture up, but I'm afraid of screwing up our screen of the tote bag. Actually, give me a minute here. I'm going to see if I can pull this off just so that folks can see it. And of course, my computer wants to go slowly. There we go. Where is the tote bag? That is so awesome. I love that bag.
Yeah, we actually, while you're pulling that up, on our website, which is darkstaradventures.com, we have like a whole shop full of Dark Star Adventures and Cult of the Cave Crickets merch that we couldn't include on the Kickstarter. The way that it's printed and fulfilled can't be done through Kickstarter because it uses a third-party service. So like there's things like this mug, Dark Star Adventures mug. There's t-shirts, hats. There's Cult of the Cave Cricket specific stuff like mugs, t-shirts, hats. Yeah, so check it out on there if you want to like show some additional support. We'd really appreciate it. And everything on there was designed by Casey. She did all of the art, all of the illustrations. And just to sort of like reinforce that, we don't use AI for anything. And I just want to
Awesome.
let you know about my absolute hatred for AI being included in the arts. Everyone, listen to me. It's a tool that you can use to help you with tasks that human beings shouldn't have to be doing.
Art is not one
Human
of
beings should be doing art. Machines should
Yes.
not be doing art. Listen to me.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, man. It's like, I picture AI being the thing that comes up with the cure for cancer, not doing your cover image for your
Yes.
adventure.
Yeah.
And all right, I'm going to try
Absolutely.
sharing my screen now, and hopefully this doesn't crash the world, but I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, when you watch Star Trek and you see that technology
There's
has
the
advanced so
bag
much
right
that
there.
people get to do art for fun. And that's not the way we're going. We're just using art to do all of the things that are fun. And that leaves us with the menial jobs. What's going on with that?
Yeah,
Yes, where's the tote bag?
speed it up. Speed it up.
Yeah, let's get to our our utopia. I want to get to our Star Trek utopia.
So you and me both. So we can actually kind of go through the stretch goals here. There's the tote bag. And I love the Krikari art. Like,
Yeah.
Casey killed it again with
that was one of the
really
first
with
pieces of
everything
art
she did.
Yeah, and that mycelium curtain, that's actually one of the enemies that doubles as it's an enemy, a trap, a puzzle, and a magic item all rolled into one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
If anyone checks out our latest Kickstarter update, you'll see a link to a review by Wasabi Burger, who's very big in the DCC community. And he details like some of the mycelium curtain stuff. And yeah, check that out. And he talks about that art. And yeah, we're very grateful for him for covering that as well. Veil of Madness is huge as well. That's an awesome magic item and really is, I don't want to reveal too much about that, but like most OSR magic items, it's not necessarily something that's just good for you. There's always a downside. So all of these magic items in the book are like good and either obviously also bad, so you have to make a conscious decision to use it, or later on could be very bad for the players. So we always like having like nothing's free,
Yep. You know what image that evokes for me is Beastmaster. When he's up on that hill with the bat people and they wrap everybody up in it. And that's all I could think of the second I saw that. That's fantastic.
It kind of makes me think of Frodo all webbed up by
Shelob. By Shelob, yep.
And then here's my Coelorax, the great mushroom god. And there's the meteor that's also on the cover. So there's a story beat there being revealed. And then, of course, the inside cover art without all the text. That's a pretty big print, too. It's an 8.5 by 11, which is the size of the adventure itself. And it's on completely different paper. All these prints are on different paper. It's display level paper and display level ink. It's meant to be hung on your wall.
That's awesome. And then the cover print, which I am so in love with this cover, Jeff. It is like, I would love to have like a 24 by 36 poster of this at some point. It's just that good.
Yeah, we considered it. We're definitely getting one for ourselves at least. And actually,
nice.
That guy on the ground who's one of the expedition
He looks
members,
an awful lot like you.
He is me. So Casey like drew everything out how she wanted to like do the composition, and then she was like, "Okay, lay on the ground, pretend the cricket's attacking you." So there's a bunch of pictures of me like and like crawling away and like holding my neck. And then she came up with this, and it just blew my mind. Like, I don't get how people do that. How people draw and just, I have something in my head, and they just like create it. It's incredible and it's wonderful, and AI should not be doing it.
No,
I don't want to get too preachy.
No, I could go on for hours with you about that. And then an additional PDF is just $7.
Yeah, these are the same prices as the tiers themselves, so you still get the 25 to 30% discount for the add-ons.
And then
that's the Splinter Blade. That's another magic item.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to reveal anything about that, or would you rather hold off?
Well, I mean, the people that are probably interested in watching this aren't players. They're probably judges and DMs that want to buy it. So I don't mind revealing a little bit of extra info. The meteoric splinter blade is a shard of this meteor, which was pried off and has some interesting magical qualities that tie into the adventure and can help resolve some of the more difficult dilemmas and battles that come towards the end of the adventure. There's actually a lot of stuff like that that weaves its way throughout the adventure. There's interesting like powders that have been created by crushing bioluminescent mushrooms. And then you can mix the powder with water and you can make paints. So the Krikari use that to stylize their shells. And it's actually part of their communication method. But that actually comes back too. It can be used as a device to assist in different battles as well. So there's a lot of stuff like that that weaves through. There's like 3 or 4 things like that that kind of assist with battles and different dilemmas, but also have properties that will help after this adventure, because I don't believe anything should exist in this simple like bottle. We want things to be useful outside of this adventure. So they have some properties that are only for the adventure, but then they also have general properties that are going to be useful like moving forward. And of course, they all have negative things that could happen, and players will have to decide, is this worth it for me? And I think most of them will say yes, which will make things very interesting for the judge or DM like moving forward.
That's awesome, because they always say yes to something.
They always say yes.
Yeah, mixed effect, you know. It's just, I always say yes because it's fun in the game to see what's going to happen to your character.
It's like, oh, I get these glasses that let me see into the future, but I become blind, or I stop being able to form new memories. They're like, yeah, sure, put them on.
Yeah, all about it. So I do have one last question that popped up looking at the Krikari. Were you a big Dark Sun fan?
I didn't play a lot of Dark Sun. I played a little bit. I actually didn't run or was in a lot of modules growing up. I read a lot of books. So I read mostly Dragonlance, but
nice.
Obviously, Forgotten Realms was everywhere. I had to read about Driz Duerden, and that was all super exciting. But Dragonlance was where my heart lied. I really loved those, and I did have Dark Sun like 2nd edition like rule books, and I used those in my campaigns, but I didn't run any of the modules.
The reason for the question is I'm wondering if the Thri-kreen were any kind of inspiration for the Krikari.
I mean, that's a really good question. I think that they're so prevalent because they're in monster manuals that aren't Dark Sun specific. Like they appear, there's like the Monster Manual 2 for AD&D 2nd edition that I'm pretty sure they're in. There's also cave crickets themselves are in that monster manual. They don't look like these cave crickets, but
there's been cave crickets throughout their own way. Yeah, that is so cool. Yeah, I didn't remember the cave crickets being there in AD&D 2nd edition, but
we were actually flipping through to like see inspiration for like how we wanted to draw things. And I was like, hey, cave crickets. We have cave crickets. That wasn't the inspiration. The inspiration for cave crickets was I originally was doing Beastmen as like a placeholder. And for the very first beta test, like beta play test, that's like actually what I had was Beastmen. But I knew that's not what it was going to end up being. I wanted to find something that eats fungus because they would be eating of their mushroom god. I wanted to find something that could live underground, but would also come above ground sometimes. And I wanted to find something that would be terrifying when mutated and grown and forms a cult. So when I started looking at the short list of things that live in wet, sopping, fungal-infested caves, eats of that fungus, and has sort of a hive mind mentality, like ants, for instance, I was like, no. Oh, what's a cave cricket? And I looked it up, and I was like, these suckers are terrifying. This is what we're using.
Yeah, I can't imagine how high pitched my scream would be running into a 7-foot tall cricket that's coming at me, like ready to eat me. Yeah. I've got a movie in my head of like a little kid standing there just screaming at the top of their lungs, and that would basically be me, you know. And then I would probably freeze in place and get eaten. So
I would love to try to use cave crickets in other ways, but I think a horror adventure is probably the best. Like I would love to see
Oh,
like Stand By
absolutely.
Me, but with mutated cave crickets or
That would be awesome. All right. Well, I will bring up, and I know you did mention you have a timeline today. We're at about 50 minutes. Are you still good to go over the spreads or?
I can do 15 to 20 minutes more and then
Okay,
I'll have
cool.
to, yeah.
So there is that beautiful cover spread.
Yeah.
And
So that's the front and the back cover combined. And that's how Casey
love
drew it.
that.
She drew like a huge thing like that, knowing that she was going to make it the front and back cover. And this, along with, I think, 2 other widescreen illustrations like this, are actually available as a digital wallpaper pack as an add-on.
So cool. Yeah, that might be getting added to my pledge so that I can have these guys haunting my every moment I'm on my computer.
That's what my wallpaper is this exact
Nice.
one.
All right. I'll go to number 2, which has the inside cover and the intro.
Yeah.
Look at
So
that cover.
yeah, this
Ah,
inside one, when we were looking at what pieces of art we wanted to include, a big inspiration for us was Doom of the Savage Kings. And Doom of the Savage Kings has an excellent inside cover picture like this of the heroes, level 1 peasants going inside of the Serpent's Mound, I think it's called, which is that spot that's just north of Heorot. So when we saw that, we're like, we have to do this. So Casey was very game for it. So she did that whole cover and then immediately did this inside cover, which is crazy and just as much work. And I mean, I'm in love with it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. The imagery that it evokes and like the ideas it gets rolling through my brain of like, what are they seeing? Where are they? And all of that just, she is such an amazing artist. So
She's
you'll have to
incredible.
relay that to her for me.
There's a hidden Krakari in the left too. You can see his face kind of peeking out a little bit. She put like a little hidden Krakari. And then there's some creepy crawlies, spiders, lots of mushrooms and spider webs and stuff. So yeah, it's incredible. She did great. I don't know exactly what classes she was thinking of. Obviously, that's a dwarf in 5e, probably a warrior. That's probably a monk in 5e in the background, but might be more like a rogue in DCC. And then obviously we have our classic wizard. We actually went through a bunch of permutations about whether he should have a big hat with like a floppy bend in it but I really love the rogue.
I think she nailed it with that of not having the hat and the orb just kind of hovering there, giving some light. And
yeah, it gives me some Diablo 1 vibes, that wizard.
Yeah. All right, we'll jump over to number 3. What are we seeing here besides more awesome art from Casey?
So the top left piece of art, that's actually, so this meteor on the cover is crashing into the ground on the cover, but when the expedition arrives, the meteor's been there for a little while. So they're actually going to investigate this meteor that came down. And as you can see, there's no meteor there. That's kind of a problem. There's also tiny little Krakari hanging out next to this crack in the ground. So that crack leads down into the cave system, which is very expansive. Way off in the background, that's the Black Mountain. The Black Mountain is described as like perfect triangle, like a tetrahedron, completely unnatural. Nothing like this would ever form normally in nature. And in fact, as you're approaching it, it looks like a perfect black triangle that's just been lifted off of a map and placed onto the landscape. Just
like a giant D4 that somebody picked up and just set over there.
Exactly, yeah. And then on the right, so there's a couple entrances into the caves. One is that crack on the left, and one is going by the river pathway, which is what you're seeing on the right. Both have their own trials. I don't want to go too deep into them in case people are watching that are going to be playing the adventure, but suffice to say, both of them are entrances into different areas of the caves, and they are both loaded with problems.
It looks like someone's having a very bad day in that picture.
Yeah. Someone, hopefully someone can swim.
All right, let's jump over to number 4.
So there's the meteoric
Ooh.
splinter blade on the left.
Yep.
Kind of details it if people want to take a quick look at that. The spore weaver nest. Spore weavers are the fungal spiders, and then you can see a spore weaver on the bottom right as well.
That's too big.
Yeah, they ain't small.
Oh man. That would be another thing. I would give away our position in the dungeon, because as soon as one of those are coming at me, you're hearing that 6-year-old high-pitched scream come out of me.
Totally. And something that's interesting to point out
I
on that
double
page
jumped on that one.
is when there's NPCs, I like to list, besides just their stat block, I like to list, their pronouns and their profession, but also some keys about how to role play them. So, cool. When you see on the far right, it says Amos Chalmers. Right above that, it says he, him, alignment lawful, guard, and he's loyal, diligent, and quiet. So I always give a little description to say, like, this is how you play this person. And I do that throughout that as different NPCs are either saved, or if they die, then you just have extra information that you're not going to use. And we try to have representation here. So there's a lot of men, a lot of women, and some non-binary people as well. So Rowan Cray is an example of that. Yep. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great to see, because it really needs to be done more.
Yeah, it was really important to us to make sure we had like accurate representation for all gamers.
You get a high five from me on that one. All right, number 5. There is the Veil of Madness again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can just picture them. I won't say anything because I don't want to get make you make a facial expression if I nail what it's going to do.
Yeah, so that's the Veil of Madness, which I think Casey absolutely crushed representing it. I mean, because I wrote this whole adventure with no art. And then she had to look at my descriptions and pick my brain. And then she came back to me and she's like, how about this? And it's like, my God, how is that possible that you just lifted this out of my brain and made it even better than I imagined it?
You were in my head.
And then there's a little decorative image down there to represent the grotto. We're getting pretty deep into the caves now. The grotto is sort of an area for potential respite before the final incredibly difficult area.
Look at that map.
Yeah. So on the left, we have a handout. This is a letter that the players could find in the camp that leads to some additional some additional evidence or information that might lead them down certain paths. There's a couple different paths they could go down, and there's a lot of different pieces of evidence they could find or ignore. So we just wanted to give them a lot of like breadth in how they like conduct their investigation of the missing expedition. On the right, this is a incredibly fantastic map by Marc Moreau, who's a French illustrator and cartographer. He's worked with Critical Role. He helped develop the map for Baldur's Gate 3 for Larian Studios. He's worked with Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, we just connected one day. We just started talking. I really didn't have any idea like who he was or what he's worked on before, but we just started talking. And when we started talking about, because he does illustrations, I was like, well, do you do commissions for illustrations? He's like, yeah, I do like cartography specifically. And I'm like, oh, cool. I need a map maker. And then when I started talking with him and going through like what that could look like and researching him and like seeing previous maps that he's done, I could not believe my good luck. He's incredible. He's so fun to talk to. We've been going back and forth about not only this map, but the next map for our next adventure, which is it's currently called Night at the Contemporary Arts Museum, where a bunch of contemporary art comes to life. And it's not.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's not super friendly like the movie with Ben Stiller.
That's awesome.
And he's doing a great job on that map as well. So here there's 3 sections to the map. There's section A, which
ground.
Is, overland. Section B, which is the caves. And section C, which is the deep caves, which is where things really get real.
Awesome. I am so excited for this. And yeah, Well, I know you've got to get going, and you do have an afternoon ahead of you. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you would like to touch on?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would just like to thank everyone for watching and getting through an hour of listening to me talk about a thing that I made. That means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the backers we have, everyone that's joined the project or joined the cult. It's been super fun talking with everyone, and I feel very honored to have the chance, Casey and I both, to have the chance to make art and have people get excited about it and want to support it. And there's so few opportunities for people to do the things that they love and the things that they're passionate about in this world today. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for telling your friends. Thanks for backing. And thanks for believing in us.
Yeah, awesome. Well, folks, get out there. The link is in the little scrolly thing, and I've also got it in the description. Let's get this up to 10K and make Jeff smile even more. So, all right. Well, I will let you get going. And folks, have a great day. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Games with Dave. If you enjoyed this, click the like button, maybe give it a subscription, and have a good one. And I'll see you at the table.